This morning, a Texas family is demanding answers in the deadly shooting of Lorenzo Salgado Araujo by ICE. Hundreds of people packed a vigil in Houston's East End yesterday to show support for Salgado's family and call for an independent investigation into the tragic incident. Salgado's oldest son, Ronaldo, spoke to the crowd of supporters, renewed his call for accountability, and shared what his family wants most right now.
Continue the pressure to continue obtaining a full independent investigation, to continue to return the evidence, or just to continue preserving the evidence, and for his van to be returned to us. His wallet, his phone, his belongings to be returned to us. His lunchbox, which I imagine it just sitting there in that van at the FBI facility, just rotting away, never eaten, you know? It was the last meal my mom made for him, and she just wants that lunchbox back to wash it again.
Joining us now is the host of MS Now's Connect, Jacob Soboroff, who interviewed Ronaldo Salgado ahead of the vigil. He is also MS Now's senior political and national reporter. Jacob, thanks for coming in early for us today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
No one should have to make that appeal that he just made at a vigil for their murdered father. Can we listen quickly before we go to you for a clip on your interview with Ronaldo?
Yeah, I would love to.
Come back.
We've spoken many times as a family together on what would happen, what should happen in the event if ICE detained him. So there was a way for him to come back home to us had those vehicles been properly marked.
Do you have a message for President Trump?
I do not want to speak to the president, nor do I have a message for him. I just want my dad. I just want to have a funeral for him. I know that the people behind me have many messages for him. I right now just want to think about my dad, not about the president.
It's understandable. And I think that our instinct so often in times like this, including in the middle of the largest mass deportation effort in American history, is to ask people who experience it what they feel about the policy. But this is for people across the country, including American citizens, the families of Renee Nicole Good and Alex Preddy, not about policy or politics, at least not in the moment. It's about losing a loved one. And when we talk about who mass deportation ensnares, it is neighbors and friends and coworkers and loved ones and fellow parishioners and Lorenzo's, like, you know, the owners of small construction businesses with American citizen children. And it was incredible to talk to Ronaldo yesterday because I think the bravery and the grace with which he's able to sit there and reflect on who his father was as a man, when they had sat as a family and talked about, he told me yesterday, what they would do, and I encourage everybody to go watch the full interview, what they would do if this happened to him in Houston, because this is a conversation that families, undocumented or not, that look like the Salgados, have been having now, unfortunately, for the better part of this entire second administration and even the first one.
I'm thinking about what Rosa Flores, who was on with us yesterday, who's in Houston for us, talked about when she was on our show, which was showing video that almost completely discounts what the DHS accusations were, why this happened. And thinking about the lunchbox that he's talking about, we can no longer, and we probably should never have just trusted the words of the federal government when it comes to when they're hurting and killing people. We were both on the floor of the Republican National Convention in 2024 when they were saying mass deportations. And the thing that I, and probably you too, thought at the moment was like, what is that going to look like? And it was always going to look like this. Always going to look exactly like this. And we should say, what does look like this mean? It means ICE and the federal government now acknowledging that he was not the intended target. Right. Mr. Salgado Araujo was not the intended target of this immigration operation, yet he is dead today. They said in the immediate aftermath that he had tried to attack federal agents with his vehicle. It's the same story they told about Renee Nicole Good. And how many times over and over again
Are we going to have to fact check probably every time, honestly.
Every single time.
To fact check, to realize that these initial statements coming out of not just the agents on the ground, but the White House, Stephen Miller, the people that called Alex Preddy, all of those derogatory terms, instead of a nurse who was on the street in order to look after his fellow Minnesota citizens. And now this family in Houston it makes me sick to say it, the latest who experienced this at the hands of the United States federal government and these heavily armed, in many cases, masked agents on the streets of all of our cities.
You know, you said something a moment ago that made me think of Nolan Wells, who we talked about yesterday, the young black teenager who was found dead off this island off the coast of Mississippi. That, you know, Lorenzo and his family, they had conversations at home about what to do if they got mixed up in what was happening. And the conversations that the Wells family had with Nolan before this happened, and the conversations that Mr. Salgado and his family had to have before this happened to them, it's really striking to me how many families in this country are families of color in this country having to have conversations that the rest of the country doesn't know about.
The talk
and don't understand. And when they hear about it, they're like, oh, well, why? This is why.
Over and over again, black families, brown families, the idea that there's even a shorthand for it, that you have to have the talk in order to know what to do if you are faced with law enforcement officers who are meant to be here to protect all of us. This is America, and I think it's important to remind ourselves of that.
And this is exactly this country. And I think when people say this isn't America, I get frustrated because that's exactly what we are, and we should be real and honest about that. Emma Sniles, Jacob Sobroff, thank you.
It's good to see you guys.
Friend.